Hello friends, welcome to Ecoholics YouTube channel. My name is Avinash and in this video I'll be discussing with you four important government schemes, right? So I've selected International Solar Alliance for discussion. It's a very important initiative launched by India. So I'll give you a detailed understanding of what this particular initiative entails. Secondly, we will also be looking at the PM Vishwakarma Yojana, which is by the Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises. Thirdly, after the Vishwakarma Yojana, we will be looking at the PM E-Drive scheme, which is for the electric vehicles adoption in India, launched by Ministry of Heavy Industries. And fourthly, we will look at how India is shifting away from fossil fuels towards cleaner energy, right? So we'll be looking at several initiatives taken by Government of India in this regard, right? Good morning, Apurab. Thank you for joining in. Good morning, everyone. So let us start with the discussion. So I would like to discuss the first and the fourth scheme first because they are pretty much interrelated with one another, right? And subsequently, very briefly, I would talk about PM E-Drive scheme and the Vishwakarma Yojana. I want to elaborate on the first two schemes quite a bit because I believe that they are that important for the exam. While all the schemes are important, but from an exam point of view, International Solar Alliance is very important, and whatever India is doing towards moving away from fossil fuels towards green sources of energy, that becomes quite significant, right? That becomes quite significant. So we'll be discussing that in great details. So let us start. I'll be highlighting some very important stuff which I would like you to please take a special note of, right? So this ISA is a global initiative that was launched in 2015. So almost 9 years now, right? And it was launched by India and France. It was launched at the historical COP21 summit. I am calling this historical COP21 summit because you may be aware that United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change, right? So as a part of this convention, there is a conference of parties that is held or that should be held every year, right? More or less, right? So as a part of this COP21, we launched International Solar Alliance. COP21 was also the one in which we had the Paris Agreement, by way of which we adopted the Sustainable Development Goals that we are trying to pursue and achieve by the year 2030. There were a lot of other developments that had also taken place in and around COP21. So COP21 is an important terminology. It's an important concept. We'll keep coming across this word COP21. I'm struggling to speak a little bit because of my throat issues. So please bear with me. Okay. So yeah, the idea is that this is basically International Solar Alliance is headquartered in India, right? So this was the first international organization that was established in the country, right? So kind of reflects India's rise as an important country and also reflects India's seriousness and commitment towards multilateralism, towards having a carbon neutral future, because we are having abundant sunshine. A lot of other countries which are within the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn are having abundant sunshine, right? So there can be a serious dent so far as solar energy production is concerned, and that's what we are trying to spearhead over here, right? Now there are 120 members and signatory countries, right? And solar cooperation, security of energy, moving away towards cleaner energy systems, all of these things are happening thanks to this International Solar Alliance, right? It's playing a very important role. It's playing that important a role, right? Now, seventh session of this alliance was held in Delhi, right? Which is why we are discussing this, right? Obviously, we are trying to accelerate solar energy. Obviously, wherever there is a lack of energy access, particularly amongst African countries, that is where these sources of energy are very important, right? So several initiatives have been launched in the past. Going ahead, also will be launching a lot of initiatives, right? So there is something called a Solar X Startup Challenge, Stark Initiative, Global Solar Facility, Viability Gap Funding, Solar Data Portal, International Solar Festival, Green Hydrogen Innovation Center, and ISA Knowledge Series. I'm reasonably sure that you are not expected to know each one of them in great details, right? Just you can understand from the name itself that startup challenge, that if you are, let us say, solar based startup, will support you, right? Stark initiative for getting the right technology skills in developing economies, right? Global solar facility, this is basically looking like an investment fund. Viability gap funding scheme, right? Providing money to solar projects in LDCs and SIDS. So your least developed countries and SIDS are the ones which are at the greatest threat of climate change, in the sense that they are way behind when it comes to developmental indicators, and they are, going to face the brutal impact in terms of adaptation and mitigation towards climate change, and therefore they need a lot of help, and so on and so forth. You can understand that yes, we have played an important role in, taking all these initiatives off the ground, right? Apart from that, right, right, in 24-26 period, India is the president of the International Solar Alliance, right? So the idea over here is that there are a lot of representations coming in from various different quarters of the world. We can leave all of that aside. I would just like to focus on something which is very important, which shows what International Solar Alliance has been able to achieve in the last 9 years. Right? All these reports and all these things are absolutely fantastic. Good, congratulations. But what is the takeaway? Right? So we have already spoken about the fact that India and France have joined hand together to launch this particular initiative. Founding conference was held in 2018, which is again very good, right? So International Solar Alliance is helping us move forward towards SDG 7, that is affordable and clean energy, as well as SDG 13, that is climate action, right? So from these two SDGs point of view, International Solar Alliance is important, right? All the United Nations members, they can join. So initially there was the idea that we want to have those countries which have a significant potential to generate solar energy to a part of to be a, become a part of this alliance. Later on we felt that let all United Nations member become a part of this alliance, it's okay, right? So that's about it. If you look at the objective, right? So the objective is to unlock $1 trillion of investment in solar investments, right? $1 trillion of funding in solar investments. We want to do this by 2030, right? So there is something called as towards thousand strategy, right? That we want to provide energy access to a billion people. We want to install 1,000 gigawatts of solar energy capacity, right? And that would help in reducing 1,000 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions annually, right? So I believe that this towards thousand strategy is very important, something which is easy to remember and something which is relevant. The examiner can ask you this as a part of a multi-choice question. You can mention this as a part of your long answer questions, right? So both ways, this thousands toward thousand strategy is important, right? So there are some 9 comprehensive programs apparently, right, which are targeting different sections of this entire idea of International Solar Alliance. I guess that's important over here, right? What has India been doing so far as providing leadership in this International Solar Alliance is concerned, right? So we have kept our own target pretty ambitious. 500 gigawatts of non-fossil fuel based energy is what we are targeting. And of course, within this non-fossil fuel based energy, solar energy is going to play a very, very important role, right? So I don't know whether you remember this or not, right? But Prime Minister Narendra Modi had announced something called as the Panchamrit Initiative, right? Panchamrit Initiative was basically a bouquet of 5 activities or 5 goals that India had kept for itself with respect to reducing carbon emission and engendering sustainable development is concerned, right? So in that sense, as an individual contributor, India is playing an important role, right? And also bringing together these nations in this solar alliance, helping create scalable solar projects, creating policy frameworks, right? India is playing an important role. To give you a quick overview of India's khud ka solar sector, right? So obviously it's expanding. We are ranked 5th globally right now. We are only going to go up, right? So the world had a target of 1,000 gigawatts, but as of September 2024, we already have 90 gigawatts, right? Which is a 30-fold increase over the past 9 years. So this is leadership by example, right? If you go by National Institute of Solar Energy's estimates, we can generate 748 gigawatts of energy. That's pretty huge. That's pretty awesome, right? So I mentioned about the 5 Panchamrit targets that Prime Minister Modi had given commitment towards, right? So the first is that you will be getting 500 gigawatts of non-fossil fuel based energy by 2030. Second is that you will meet 50% of your energy requirements from renewables by 2030. Third is that you will reduce the carbon emission by 1 billion tons, right, with reference to a reference year till 2030. And fourth is that you will reduce carbon intensity of your economy by less than 45%. That means that you will take it less than 45% carbon intensity of the economy, meaning that when you are undertaking production of goods and services, so you are naturally emitting carbon dioxide. So you want to reduce that, right? That's what the basic idea is, that on a per unit basis, how much are we emitting, right? So if you keep adopting renewable energy for industries, especially for polluting industries, etc. So naturally you will be able to reduce the carbon intensity of your economy. It's common sense and it's logical, right? And finally, and most importantly, that by the year 2070, India will achieve the target of net zero carbon emissions, right? What do I mean by net zero carbon emissions, right? I mean that if I have, let us say, emitted a certain amount of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, I will put into place processes, technologies, and also a forest cover, which will help in absorbing back a significant amount of carbon dioxide, such that whatever I have emitted, at least that much I have absorbed back. So on a net basis, my emissions of carbon dioxide or my emissions of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere will be net zero, right? So these are the 5 Panchamrit goals. Anytime that you are writing an answer on renewables or on clean energy or on sustainable development, you have to, or you should mention these Panchamrit targets, and you should mention them in brevity. You should mention it in small number of words. You don't need to write so much. Don't need to waste so much time. Nobody has the time, right? And of course, we have made remarkable strides in terms of creating this non-fossil fuel capacity. So there has been a 400% increase in the last 9 years, right? So 46% of our total energy capacity is coming from non-fossil sources, right? We have done a significant amount of effort in that sense. So there is this PM Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana, right? So this scheme is providing free electricity, 300 units per month to 1 crore households in India if you install rooftop solar units, right? So not only will it promote renewables, but it will also reduce your electricity cost. So how is it that this is helping, right? So you will be getting free electricity, you will be getting low interest loans for installation of these solar panels. There will be an annual saving of rupees 15,000, right, for 300 units that you will be getting free from the government per month. And the outlay for this scheme is around 75,000 crores, right? So you can see that this is a very important scheme. I mean, it's not very important for a city like Bombay. We don't have a lot of standalone houses. But let us say if you're staying in a city like Jaipur or somewhere around those kinds of cities where there are a lot of individual standalone houses where people have terraces. So you can think in terms of utilizing your terrace for installation of solar panels, right? There is also this PM Kusum scheme, right? So again, the idea is that we want to boost the utilization of solar power in agriculture, because farmers, they have access to a lot of land. Not all the land is productive, right? So the idea is that we can try to create around 35 gigawatts of solar energy through agricultural land, right? That will reduce farmers' dependence on dirty fuels such as diesel, etc. Will also increase farmers' income, because if you are able to generate electricity more than what you need, then you can put it back into the grid and you can earn some money out of it, right? And will obviously help in reducing pollution, right? So there are 3 components to this: establishing solar plants, establishing standalone solar pumps, and establishing grid connected pumps, right? Some amount of subsidy is being provided, etc. Then there are solar parks. So these are pretty large, pretty mega solar parks, right, which will on a standalone basis be able to generate 500 megawatts plus of solar energy, right? So the idea is to occupy contiguous land in India's deserts, around India's oceans, on our lands, right? And the idea is to generate significant amount of energy, right? So not only will we create capacity, we will also be creating supporting infrastructure. And obviously the government of India alone cannot pull this off, so we'll require collaboration with PSUs and private sector enterprises, right? Apart from these initiatives, which I would appreciate if you could highlight in your answers going ahead, India has also allowed 100% FDI in renewable energy projects, right? So that money can flow in without any interruptions whatsoever, right? To just keep the momentum of my discussion going, I would just like to quickly jump to the fourth scheme over here, or the fourth article that I've selected for discussion over here. And I'd like to just discuss this with you, right? That India has taken a lot of steps towards moving towards clean energy. Now let's see what this Asian Development Bank report says, right? So the report that I'm referring to is your Asia Pacific Climate Report. This is the report that we are looking at. We have already mentioned that we are having this net zero target of 2070, right? And naturally, this Asia Pacific Climate Report is saying that India is moving away from dependence on fossils towards cleaner energy, right? So this is happening. So be it solar, be it electric vehicles, be it a strong energy grid, we are doing it all. We are doing it all, right? So the idea is that we have been slashing subsidies for dirty energy, for fossil fuels, etc., and that is a good thing, right? We are phasing out petrol and diesel subsidies, right? We are putting tax hikes from 2017 onwards, right? So what we are doing is that A, we are getting rid of subsidies, B, we are putting tax. So our financial position, government's financial position is improving, right? And those who want to move away from fossil fuel will be able to do that. So not only is there a fiscal breathing room, meaning that government has funds, it has resources, right? But it is also supporting a change in behavior at an individual level. There are subsidies for solar parks. There is distributed energy solutions that we are looking at, whether it is PM Kusum or Har Ghar Muft Bijli, etc. There are state-owned enterprises, right, which are coming into the fray. So all in all, we're doing quite a bit, right? So this is something which I would really appreciate if you could highlight in your answers, right? That India has reduced fossil fuel subsidies by 85% between the 10-year period of 2013 and 2023. And this is keeping in line with our commitment towards achieving a net zero target for 2070, right? This is very, very important because we keep discussing that should we provide subsidies for clean fuel? Should we remove subsidies from dirty fuel? Should we put a tax hike on dirty fuel? Should we remove taxes on clean fuel, right? So what should be the policy mix? What should we be doing so that we can discourage the utilization of dirty fuel and we can encourage the utilization of greener energy, right? We keep discussing this theoretically, academically. It's very important to appreciate what India has done, and that's what this report is helping you in doing. It's helping in appreciating what India has done, right? So removing all the fluff aside, right? So what's the key? What are the key findings, right? So India has been effective in remove, target, and shift approach. Again, this is something which is very, very catchy. Remove, target, and shift approach. If you could write like this in your answers, in the introduction of your answer related to renewable energy, related to sustainable development, or whatever, right? That India has been following a remove, target, and shift approach as per this report that we're talking about, right? That will be nice on your part. So we are reducing fiscal subsidies, right? We are taking strategic tax measures. So be it cess on coal production, right? So we are collecting money and we are putting that money into renewable energy projects, infrastructure, and so on, right? To look at the nitty-gritty, right? To look at the nitty-gritty, right? So what we have done is that we have reduced fiscal subsidies in the oil and gas sector by 85%. We were giving around $25 billion worth of subsidy in 2013. And now that number is down to $3.5 billion by 2023, right? We have phased out petrol and diesel subsidies, which was going towards mostly, urban consumers. We have also done tax hikes, right? And now this is getting repetitive. Right? So whether it is excise duties on petrol and diesel, we have kept increasing it. So as crude oil became cheaper during this time period of 2014 to 2017, so we didn't pass on all the benefits to our consumers, right? We didn't make petrol and diesel cheap in India. We kept increasing excise duties so that the governments can mop up greater and greater amount of revenue for themselves, right? And can use that money for, funding green investments and so on, right? Apart from that, we have given targeted subsidies so that we can expand access to LPG, which is a cleaner fuel, right? So not only is it a cleaner fuel, but it will be better in terms of reducing the indoor pollution in our households. Because if I'm burning forest collected wood or something like that, then that is going to cause a lot of pollution. So LPG in that sense is a cleaner fuel, right? So you can see over here that we have removed a lot of subsidies from the fossil fuel from oil and gas sector. We have targeted subsidies towards expanded access to LPG, right? And overall, we are trying to bring about a shift, a behavioral change. We're trying to move people towards sustainable energy, towards cleaner fuel alternatives, right? What is the role of taxation, right? So be it cess on coal production, right? So 30% of the collection from this cess that was towards National Clean Energy and Environment Fund, right? So that was very, 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 very helpful. So this was between 2010 and 2017, right? So it really helped your Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. It really helped in creating Green Energy Corridor and National Solar Mission, right? So this was very, very helpful, right? Subsequently, we introduced GST in India, right? So this cess on coal production, fortunately or unfortunately, it didn't exist after 2017 because it has been subsumed into the GST compensation cess, right? So GST compensation cess, if you remember, was collected so that states can be given the promised revenue that they were assured when GST was introduced. I don't know whether you remember this or not, but when GST was introduced, to get the states to give up their indirect taxation powers, to get the states to agree to this pan-India common GST indirect framework, right? States were given a promise that your GST revenues or your post GST revenues will increase 14% YOY year on year for 5 years, right? And if there is any shortfall in actual collection of GST, then the government of India will compensate. So to compensate, you have to impose a compensation cess because there was a shortfall in revenue. Government of India had promised a 14% YOY increase in the money that the states will earn through GST. So to compensate, a GST compensation cess was imposed, and through this GST compensation cess, money was collected and states were given compensation, right? So your carbon cess or your cess on coal production, like I mentioned, ceased to exist on a standalone basis, right? So the idea is that, of course, there are complexities in our fiscal landscape and we have to acknowledge that complexity. We have already spoken about PM Kusum. I will not repeat. We have already spoken about PM Surya Ghar, so there is no point repeating. You also should mention National Green Hydrogen Mission, which is a very, very important step in this regard, right? So what is the conclusion, right? Again, reiterating, remove, target and shift. Remove what? Remove your dirty energy subsidies. Target what? Clean energy subsidies. And shift what? Shift people's preferences, change people's behavior at the ground, and that's what you need to do, right? So at one point of time, people weren't biggest fans of CNG, but government made sure that CNG became an attractive and a viable option for urban commuters, right? And that did result into greater adoption of the cleaner burning fuel, right, which is also cheaper, right? So similarly, we need to achieve what we need to achieve now in terms of reducing our dependence on fossil fuel and moving towards clean energy using National Green Hydrogen Mission, PM Kusum, etc. kind of initiatives. We have significant targets in front of us, right? And for that, we need to reduce dirty subsidy, increase cleaner subsidies and measures, right? And that will be very, very helpful. And this is what your Asia Pacific Climate Report by the Asian Development Bank underscores, right? So it's not very difficult to remember any of these things if you note it down appropriately and just have a look at it, right? I'd like to go and quickly discuss my PM Vishwakarma Yojana. So this scheme is important not because they will ask you a standalone question on the PM Vishwakarma Yojana. I don't see that happening. But this scheme is important because it will help you in adding value to your otherwise standard answers, right? So the idea over here is that on the 77th Independence Day, we launched this scheme. Uh, Finally, it was launched on September 17, 2023, Vishwakarma Jayanti ke dauran, right? The idea being that we want to support the traditional craftsmen, right? We want to support their livelihood. We want to help them in skill development. We want to give them access to finance, access to market. यही होगा, right? Common sense लगा के सोचिए, right? So if you are, let us say, an individual skilled artisan, particularly from OBC community, if let's say you are a weaver, a goldsmith, a blacksmith, a laundry worker, a barber, we want to empower you, right? We want to work with these professions, right? So typically what happens is that there is a guru shishya model in these professions, in the sense that elders of the family or the previous generation, they kind of teach the next generation this particular craft and bring them into the occupation, right? So that there is some kind of continuity going on, right? There's been a lot of interest. Around 26 million applications have been submitted. Around 2.5 million applications have been successfully processed, right? So there is a lot of interest coming in, particularly from the state of Karnataka, right? If you look at the trades, so masons, tailors, carpenters, barbers, garland makers, right? These are the top 5 sources of application from a profession point of view, right? So what is happening over here is that this is basically a fully funded scheme. Entire money is being provided by union government. Outlay of 13,000 crore, 5-year period, right? So they are registered, these Vishwakarmas, the skilled artisans that we are speaking about, they are registered free of charge through the Common Service Center, right? There is this portal that we have created. There is a Vishwakarma certificate and identity card that gets created. You get a collateral free credit support of up to 1 lakh for the first instance. You get 2 lakh rupees for the second instance, and you get a concessional interest rate of 5%. So first you will get 1 lakh, probably you'll have to repay that, then 2 lakhs, and you'll get a concessional rate of 5%, right? And interest subvention by the government will be around 8%, up to the extent of 8%. So meaning that if the bank is charging, let's say 12% rate of interest, so 5% will be paid by the borrower, 7% will be paid by the government, right? And this will be paid by the government upfront to the banks. So banks don't need to wait around, right? So who will be providing this money? Be it your scheduled commercial banks or RRBs or SFBs or cooperatives bank or anybody, besides basically anybody, right? Apart from this, we'll also be providing a basic and advanced training, a toolkit, incentive of 15,000, and incentive for digital transactions and marketing support. So meaning that you can be accepting GPay kind of payments is what I understand out of this. And of course you'll be getting some kind of training. So skill development में भी फायदा हो जाएगा, right? So tooling facilities आपको मिल जाएंगे, tooling kit आपको मिल जाएगा, industry ready मिल जाएगा, because you will be getting appropriate amount of skill development, right? You'll be getting support for product development, and you'll also be getting consultancy and job work services, right? I guess that this is about it. This is the most important part. I can keep going into it, but that's not required. You have gotten the gist of the scheme, and that was the objective of bringing this over here. So if they ask you a standalone MCQ, you are able to tackle it, and you appreciate that whenever you are speaking about skill development, or whenever you are talking about unemployment, or whenever you are talking about generating sustainable livelihood opportunities for a variety of sections of our society, then you don't forget the Vishwakarmas, right? So this is a new word that you have to start using in your dictionary. So just the way we recoined disabled as Divyangjans, right? Similarly, now what we are doing is that these traditional artisans, handicraftsmen, etc., we are calling them as Vishwakarmas, right? So this is a new vocabulary that you have to be okay with. I hope that this is clear to all of you. All right, moving ahead to the next one, the PM E-Drive scheme. Electric vehicle sales have been increasing apparently, right? So PM Electric Drive Revolution in Innovative Vehicle Enhancement. Oh my God, right? So they have a full form for PM E-Drive. So I'm sure that you can get rid of the full form unless you're giving that kind of an exam where they ask you full form. Then you can't, right? But otherwise, this PM E-Drive scheme is there. 10,900 crore launched on October 1, 2024 for a period of what looks like 1.5 years, right? Obviously, you want to accelerate the adoption of EVs, develop charging infrastructure, robust EV manufacturing ecosystem, right? So there has been a record surge in electric vehicles. A lot of people have started, appreciating electric and adopting electric, right? I just want to quickly look at the core points over here, right? So we are providing subsidies, right? So demand incentives are being provided, subsidies are being provided so that demand can be created for e-two-wheelers, for e-three-wheelers, for e-ambulances, e-trucks, and other emerging categories, right? So you see that we are not focusing so much on four-wheelers in this particular initiative at least, because we have already done that in the FAME scheme that we have initiated. Right now, I think we have retired the scheme, if I'm not wrong. We are providing grants for creation of capital assets, right? For the acquisition of e-buses, establishment of a network of charging stations, right? Upgradation of MHI testing facilities, right? So wherever capital expenditure is required, we are trying to support that as well. And administration of the scheme, including information, education, communication, etc., right, is being provided over here, right? Now there has been an increase in a lot of these segments के अंदर sales, right? So which is good, right? So that's about it, I guess, right? I have already mentioned the eligible category, so I don't think that I need to repeat this again and again, right? So primarily for commercial utilization vehicles, we are promoting this particular scheme. There are some greater details over here. I don't think that this is important, honestly speaking, right? So I guess we can skip this part over here. I'll leave this for you to read in this document. I'll be sharing this document. You can download it from the Ecoholics app and you can have a look at it. So with this, we'll bring the session to an end. We'll meet on Monday again. Until then, thank you so much. All the best and Jai Hind to all of you. Bye bye.